Superman is a hard character to write. Look at all the other DC characters in the last 20 years. They usually get one good popular show or movie. Aquaman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, all of them have had a good movie or TV show for at least one season that at least some people generally like. Poor Superman though. When you talk about the last good Superman film that was before 2025, you opened up a war zone. Why is it so hard to make a good Superman movie that everyone likes? And that is because the largest problem with creating a Superman movie is that you have to go against the public stigma that Superman is boring. And let's be clear, he's not boring. I love Superman, I love his comics, he's never been boring in the comics, he's great. But at the same time, when anyone looks at him compared to Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, or Flash, he somehow always ends up in the last of their conversation when they're talking about their favorite heroes. So with that struggle already, alongside years of evil Superman stories and people saying Superman sucks, how do you adapt a great Superman movie, and how do you make a Superman movie that's not boring? Well, let's hop right into it, because I'll tell you the answer to the whole video right off the bat. It's that it doesn't matter who your director is, or who the villain is, or the style of the film, or who does the score, or the visual effects. The reason your Superman film is going to be boring is if you don't have a Superman at the center of your film that is true to the comics and is lovable and kind. That's it. That's the secret to making a good Superman film. If you actually adapt Superman in your Superman film, it'll be great. But the problem for all the Superman movies is they did it right off the bat. Superman in 1978 is a great Superman film, and the problem with all the rest of the films is that they have to live in the shadow of Christopher Reeve, who off the bat was a perfect Superman. Now, there have been a ton of actors who have been the initial actors for a superhero, whether it's Adam West or Linda Carter or Tobey Maguire. There is room for different adaptations of the character that come after those actors because they can only cover so much in their show or films. But Christopher Reeve really just off the rip is a perfect Superman. In that first Superman film, he stands out as the star. He stands for everything that Superman should be. He's kind, he's funny, his Clark Kent is a lovable dork, but his Superman is heroic and kind and stands for what is right in a world that is constantly wrong. And those first four films, for all their faults, especially in the later halves, have that perfect comic translation of the comic book character to the screen better than any other film I've ever seen. It feels like Superman was ripped straight from the comics and put on film. I've never seen it before. So what do you do if you're creating a Superman film after him? How do you adapt Superman? That is a question even the Christopher Reeve films didn't know how to answer in the last half, and they ended up ruining his morality and character in episodes 3 and 4 to try to create a reason for there to be a sequel, and it made his Superman be a lot less interesting and a lot less lovable. And by no means I'm putting that on Christopher Reeve. He was literally a saint and seemed like one of the nicest men to ever live, and you know, he just genuinely is probably the closest thing to a saint we've ever seen. I don't know, the guy seemed amazing. But if you came off of those initial 4 films and were going to make an eventual sequel, you realize, what are we going to do with our Superman? And there were 2 really big options. Either you were going to have to imitate Christopher Reeve and try to create a character just like him that was super close to what he did and make him kind of be a carbon copy, or you were going to take a radical shift in the other direction, go darker, go weirder, and go the complete opposite route. Sometimes it actually worked and created a film like Man of Steel, and other times we just have the lost remains of Nicolas Cage's Superman film, What Was Going On? So we did see imitations of Christopher Reeve's Superman. In Superman Returns, it came out in 2006, we saw it was trying to bring back Superman like how Batman was brought back with Batman Begins. Brandon Routh this time was Superman, and this character canonically is the same character as Christopher Reeve. This though led to a film that no matter how good Brandon Routh was going to do, was going to be in comparison to Christopher Reeve, and unfortunately he's just never going to be able to live up to that version of Superman. It ends up feeling cheap and boring in comparison, and creates a film that always is going to be compared to what came before and ended up feeling hollow and pointless because you're not making a Richard Donner movie, it's a Bryan Singer movie trying to be a cheap imitation, and that's what it felt like. It wasn't new or unique to the modern day. So Zack Snyder saw this and went, we're going to have to go the complete opposite direction. Which is what he ended up doing. Henry Cavill's Superman in Man of Steel is a brooding, more serious Superman in a real world closer to ours. Look at the Daily Planet in the comics, and look at it in this movie. It's taken all the comic whimsy out of it. This is a Superman that is no fun, he's very serious, and it's a very serious world, even though his dad gets killed by a tornado that seems malevolent, I don't know. And while this film was more grounded and people did take it more seriously, and I think it did have a more strong reaction compared to Superman Returns, at least some people are still talking about this movie, what it did take away though was the purity and intrigue of that character that made him interesting in the first place. Superman is a character that is inherently interesting because he stands for what is right in a world that is wrong. He is a straight arrow character. He is always going to be a morally right character, and that's why we love him. When you take that away though, and you take away his greatest power, which is his kindness and his moral center, and you make him heavily flawed morally, making choices we wouldn't want him to make, and he ends up faltering in his morals because of how dark the world is around him, it really takes away the beauty of his character, which is his resilience and his humanity that never wavers. Superman in this film ends up falling more towards that evil Superman level of trope. He ends up being more like Homelander or Omni-Man, and it's even more accentuated in films like Batman v Superman, where at points he's just doing straight up villainous acts on people, and he doesn't really feel like the kind protector of humanity. Stop aura farming! Save that man! When Superman is killing villains and knocking over buildings with no regard for humanity or citizens in it, we've lost the purity and care that makes him unique and lovable. But those traits, maybe are from an older time. Maybe there isn't a way to adapt a modern version of Superman. It felt like this was a character that was at a crossroads, a character out of time that maybe just couldn't be adapted in a modern world. So what do? How would you possibly adapt this character in the modern age? You make him human. In the first scene in the new Superman film, we see exactly what's been missing from all of these films. We see Superman land in the snow, bloodied and hurt, and beg for someone to help him, and it's his dog. This version of Superman doesn't rely as much on his Kryptonian background or his superpowers. This version of Superman isn't a moralist god that ends up having the whole fate of humanity resting on his shoulders. This is a man. This is a person that grew up in Kansas, that was loved and had an incredible family, and is in a really difficult world. He gets way more hurt than in any other Superman film, but his strength is always his humanity and his tenacity to not break in these scenarios. His strength isn't that he can fly or has superpowers, but rather it's that he's human. The reason that Superman in this film is able to succeed and overcome these insane odds is because of his tenacity and belief and support from his friends, family, and his dog that makes him the hero that he is in this version. He is a representation of humanity standing up to humanity at its worst. He gets battered and bruised, and there's terrible people going up against him, yet Superman's morality never wavers. He remains a beacon of hope in a world that's kind of lost its way. And that is what makes Superman an interesting character. It's the same thing that made Christopher Reeve interesting in the original films. Superman is an eternal optimist as a character, something that the films are sometimes scared to lean into. Because at a certain point, these films could be mocked for being naive, but Superman is interesting because he does stand for what is right and is trying to elevate the world around him. And if that's naive, I don't know, then maybe we've really gotten too cynical as a society. Superman's sincerity always seems to be the hardest part of Superman to adapt. Superman is an incredibly good person, and that sincerity of being kind and loving and nice in a world right now that is so cruel and cold and scathing means he's a character that gets mocked for being old-fashioned. But I don't think Superman's old-fashioned. I think rather he's what we should all aspire to be and shows what the best of humanity can be. And I think that's what the best Superman films show. He doesn't need to be modern or edgy or try to adapt to modern times. His biggest strength seems to be that he's kind and is really loving and always believes in people even if it's to his own detriment. And the reason a lot of us love superheroes is because it shows normal humans doing their best to do the right thing, like Batman or Spider-Man. And there's a beauty to how interesting and reliable and broken those characters are and show the greatness we can do in our own lives when we are that way. But Superman is a different type of character because he's one of hope. He's a character that we can aspire to because once again he just shows what the best of humanity can be. And the best two films show that off. And both of them, ironically enough, are called Superman. Both the Superman films from 1978 and 2025 show the beauty of the character and the kindness of humanity as a person. Superman in these films can best be described as a friend. The reason that these films work is because unlike any of the other films that try to be like them, they nail the tone of Superman perfectly. He's kind, he's the right person, he goes up against impossible odds all the time, and while these movies are flawed, they get the character at the center of it so right that when you walk out of the film, you can't help but love it because the heart beating at the center of these films. These are films about a great person doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And that is just so uplifting. The film is great because they are both Superman movies and are proud of it. They don't shy away from the source material, and that's what makes it a knockout. It's why the first Superman movie was the first and one of the best superhero films of its time, and why Superman today still stands out as a hopeful triumph, an incredible start for the DCU and films to come, and stands as a fresh breath for what superhero films can show. A good person doing the right thing for the wrong reason, no matter the odds in a mean and cruel world, and he never lets it break him. Superman isn't a boring character. You just need to accept that he's this lovable dork that does stand for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And when you do that and you allow your boundaries to go down for a little bit and allow this incredible human to thrive saving this world, you can't help but have a good time watching these movies. Maybe they seem a little old-fashioned. Maybe it seems a little old-fashioned to believe that the best of us can end up making a true impact in the world. But isn't that what we all want to believe? Isn't that what we should aspire to? I think that's why these Superman films are great. When you have a true Superman film at the center of your film, you create a film that's about hope. And that theme is so strong that it's able to carry any other superhero. Maybe it is weird and a little punk rock to create a film that is this earnest and this honest about this character in a world that this cruel. And honestly, it might take some guts to make a Superman movie that is about a character this nice and accurate, when honestly, a character like Superman just isn't really popular anymore with so many morally gray characters. But honestly, I think it makes Superman stand out, and adapting such a kind and loving superhero maybe makes it more interesting than any other superhero film that's coming out right now. And it definitely makes a film that shows Superman, when it's done right, can never be boring.